Now, you've probably heard of the argument that in our daily life, we are generally using a very limited part of our total brain capacity. If you go by this great book, the culmination of Dr. Kahneman's work in psychology and statistics, for which he won the Nobel Prize, we need to rephrase and reframe that a little. Let's begin with a riddle, alright? So, there is a pond with a lily patch in a corner. The lily patch doubles itself every day. If the entire pond is covered in 48 days, how many days is half the pond covered in? Right? Quick. Is the answer 24? Right or wrong? Wrong. The answer is 47. Now back to Dr. Kahneman. Now, I should mention, in an experiment, a lot of very intelligent people got the answer as 24. Because that is the way our brain works. Our brain, according to this work, can be categorized into two kinds of mental processes, which are very unimaginatively called System 1 and System 2. Through most of our normal daily activities, we are generally using System 1. Daniel Kahneman calls it the automatic system, which contains our innate skills of observation. It watches the world and responds quickly to stimuli, such as loud sounds, something suddenly entering your vision. System 2, on the other hand, is what we call our reasoning self. It is more deliberative. It's the part of us that thinks actively and deeply about things. And this is where our feelings, emotions, and experiences reside. So, if System 1 is the amalgamation of our animal intelligence, System 2 is our intellect, imagination, and experience. Of course, System 1 is the system that thinks fast, and System 2 is the system that thinks slow. Before we look at the relationship between them, let us just consider. If you got the wrong answer in the riddle, you replied through your System 1. If you got the right one, your System 2 was active. Now, if you saw the solution later and went, aha, I could have got the right answer if only I was paying attention. The thing is, you were paying attention, only it was your System 1. Now, as I mentioned before, System 1 is the normal state of our mind. Now, our mind likes to stay in a condition of what we call cognitive ease. Right? Cognitive ease is less demanding. It requires less mental energy. And it also leaves our mind free to keep, we could say, scanning the outside world for any threats and problems. And from time to time, what this System 1 does is, it keeps sending a report to System 2, which is our experienced and deliberative self, that everything is fine. I'm looking, I'm watching, and you need not worry. You can stay in your limited, minimized state. We need not get active so we can preserve energy. Yeah. So what happens is, however, due to its limited processing ability, System 1 cannot handle some problems. So then, ideally, it is supposed to send a signal to System 2 that it's time to wake up. But this doesn't happen always, as we saw, because System 2 loves jumping to conclusions. And this is a problem that occurs very often, and something that Dr. Kahneman points out with so many examples throughout his book. Another example is this riddle. So there is a bat and a ball. Together they cost $1.10. The bat costs $1 more than the ball. Right? How much does the ball cost? Think about this for a moment. Alright. Now, is your answer 0.10, like mine was the first time I read this riddle? If so, consider this. If the ball costs 0.10, the bat costs 0.10, the cost of the ball, plus $1 more than the ball, which is 1.10. Then, together they would cost 1.20. The right answer should be 0.5, because then they add up to 1.10. Again, if you got the wrong answer, you were thinking through your System 1. So, the way the two systems work, let's look at this. Now you see the first problem. Solve 2 plus 2 immediately. Your System 1 can solve that problem. It's 4. Solve 17 plus 34. System 1 is going to try. It cannot solve that problem. It'll send a signal to System 2, which gets active, looks at the problem, begins adding things up, and so it will solve the problem in a while system 1 fades into the background. Alright, so you get the picture of how the two systems work. Now, system 1 also tends to run into problem in various other cases, because remember, it is our instinctive system, it is our biological system. Some of these cases are optical illusions. You've seen many optical illusions, and you see how they fool our instincts into thinking and seeing things that are not there at times. Now, statistical and cognitive biases. This is something that the book goes into deep length with so many examples that maybe we can discuss at a later stage. Now, generally this happens because system 1 is overconfident. It loves jumping to conclusions, like I said. And there is another problem. The problem is that system 2 is lazy, and system 2 should be waking up more often and trying and solving the problems that system 1 cannot. So basically the problem is that there is what we might call a cognitive gap between how system 1 and system 2 works. System 1 sends an initial observation, a report of an initial observation to system 2. System 2 just registers that and says it's all right. If we can condition our system 2 to start reconsidering these problems instead of ignoring them, and then sending a response back to system 1, right? Then system 1 could reconsider that problem. If it's still unable to process that problem, it wakes system 2 up again, and system 2 deliberates on that problem and sends another response. Now, what we are doing in this scenario is we are actively making the two systems working together. We recognize that there is a weakness in system 1. We recognize that system 2 doesn't come into the picture very often. Once we actively and consciously begin doing that and begin making these connections, we are training these two systems to work better together. What we are basically doing here is we are conditioning both our systems to work together with better synergy. And gradually, as we do this more and more often, we are training our mind, and there will be a lower lag time between this entire process of communication between the two systems, and they will begin making links together. All right. Now think of a chess master. All right. Now he's able to think of so many complex moves and possibilities, not just what he's going to do in the next turn, but forecasting into the future. Not just what he is going to do, but what his opponent is going to do and how he's going to respond. And he has to do that quickly. All right. They can think for a while, but then, they have to process so many problems immediately. They can do that because their system 1 and 2 are conditioned together. They have all that experience in their system 2, and they have all that observational power in their system 1, and they make them work together. And they gradually gain more and more experience, and this is something that you can also do if you consciously think of this process of communication and work with the advantages, disregarding the disadvantages in system 1 and 2. System 1 is your animal instinct. It is great at observing things. System 2 is your wisdom and your experience. If you can bring those two to work together, then you can think like a chess master, a grandmaster.